Hello and welcome to Character in Action from the 7 Degrees of Change Foundation. I'm Matthew J. Norcross here at Congdon Yards in High Point, North Carolina. Now today, I'm here with Deacon Francis Skinner of the Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Church, which is also in High Point. He's been in that position since April 2018, and he joins us here in the studio. Frank, thanks for being on Character in Action.
It's a pleasure to be here, Matt. Let's rock and roll.
All right. So you're here today because you're a living example of character in action. Now, before we get started, can you tell us more about yourself?
I will try. Wow, what can I tell you? I'm married with 4 children, originally from Philadelphia. We relocated to High Point, North Carolina in 1992.
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 grandchildren. Historically, I've been an IT guy for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
The last 10 years, I've been in human resources. As you mentioned, I'm a deacon in the Catholic Church, been there for almost 6 years. That pretty much covers a lot right now. Married for over 35 years.
Yeah, you covered it perfectly. So how do you define character?
Character. I would say it's that measurement of oneself that's not just for how you look at yourself, but how others look at you.
Right.
And it's also not how it is in the moment. I think that character is something that it's that measurement that we have of people when they're not around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I remember when I met so-and-so, and yes, this is how I think of them. Funeral, right?
Right.
When you're at a funeral, oh, so-and-so's not here, but they, insert adjective, that's their character.
All right. That's a good definition of character, by the way. So please tell us a story of witnessing in person or in history, someone that was a true phoenix, someone that, basically changed your life and made you, basically made the world a better place.
Okay. Anybody in history or someone relative to me?
Anyone in history.
Wow. Anyone in history? Of course, I go with Jesus Christ, but I think we'll hold off on that. I think you want to be more recent history. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. When I was in the service, Ronald Reagan was my commander-in-chief.
Reagan?
I loved him as president. I think that there was a lot of common sense that he had.
Mm-hmm.
There were definitely situations where caring and compassion were present. I'm going to stick with him for right now.
Yeah, Reagan was a definitely historical precedent.
It's pretty challenging when I put Ronald Reagan up there with Jesus Christ, but
right. Well, so moving on, please share a moment that stands out in your mind, something big or even the slightest gesture that was a transformative Phoenix moment. One where you knew you changed somebody's life.
One where I changed somebody's life. In my present role as a deacon at IHM, we have different ministries. And my one ministry that I do is called a tribunal advocate.
Mm-hmm.
I represent people who want to have their previous marriages annulled so that they can celebrate the sacraments of the Catholic Church. And it's a long, difficult process. The paperwork can be challenging at times. However, once the reconciliation is done, once everything is fixed, the joy in their eyes and their face, they'll tell me, don't stop doing what you're doing.
Right.
And so I can probably give you, several couples that I would say I've changed their life because of this ministry that I do.
All right. So let's move on. Let's move on to the traits. And the first trait I want to ask you about today is respect. Now, this is a crucial trait in life, and especially in your position. My first question is, how do you think we can rekindle the trait and lost honor of respect today?
Well, I would think again, It's a walk the walk in addition to talking the talk, right? We can say that we're respectful towards one another. One of the I heard a priest tell me one time that our actions and our words betray us. How we act really sets the tone for how we feel about one another. How we talk, the words we use and the actions we use set that tone. And we need to be careful about those. And when they hurt other people's feelings, we need to change. And that can be towards anything. Obviously, this year I've talked quite a bit about respect of the Eucharist. But, this goes towards respect of how we see each other as well.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, respect is unfortunately a lost art, and there are a lot of other ways we can try to rekindle the trait of respect, and basically seeing ourselves when we look at ourselves, as you said, things have got to change.
Right, and I think that it's a teachable. It's teachable. We change, we grow, we mature. And as that happens, good things happen, I think.
Yeah. So let's move on to the trait of responsibility. Now, you got big responsibility as a deacon. Now, how do you manage such a big task?
It's a good work life and church balance is the best way to do it. So, I mean, obviously, church on Sunday is going to be there. I'm going to be at multiple masses on Sunday. When people ask me to participate in sacraments such as baptisms or weddings or funerals, those services or those moments I don't say no to. But there are other things where people come and they'll say, well, Deacon, can you do this? And I'll say, I really have to say no to that because it's just going to take up too much time. Our Bishop Jugas, told us at our ordination that our first vocation would be to our wives. If our marriage wasn't right, then we're not going to be very good deacons. And so I have to keep that in mind when I say yes or no to a certain ministry or task, is how that affects my family or my work. So it's just working on a balance to where everybody can be satisfied, church and work and family.
Very nice. So let's move on to the trait of fairness. Now, how would you define fairness, and how would you want people to demonstrate this trait both in their professional and their personal lives?
Fairness is a tough one. So in my role in human resources, we've had people tell me, I've dealt with people all the time, and some say, I'm being treated unfairly. And sometimes they are, and we address that. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're being treated better than other people, and that's unfair as well. But I think for fairness, we need to just be aware that it's seen from two sides. Right? How I perceive fairness as one who is talking to somebody versus how the person on the other end is receiving it. That's relevant. But I think we just need to have our moral compass focused to where we know or aware of how we treat each other. Again, respect and fairness, all this falls together, as you know.
Yeah. It's definitely something to think about, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the trait of trustworthiness. Now, I told the former Lieutenant Governor, Dan Forrest, that, he was on the show a long time ago, that the trait of trustworthiness is a lost art. And it's especially true in our government and its institutions, And my question to you is, how do you define the trait of trustworthiness and live it out? And more importantly, how do you instill it in others?
That's hard. It's hard from a perspective of you almost have to be it has to be, if you're not wanting to do it, it's not going to be there.
Right.
But to make others aware of that trustworthiness and how far that goes is relevant. Back to my ministry, there are certain things that I may not share. I cannot share regarding certain delicate matters, and I wouldn't. It would ruin the ministry if that was the case. Great example is a priest in the confessional. If the priest was not trustworthy, if he was telling everybody everything, then well, that would ruin the sacrament of reconciliation. Period. It's just important that not only is trustworthiness built as we establish a relationship with someone, but when it's broken, it's, I would say, probably 5 times, maybe 10 times harder to reestablish that trust again. Right? Once it's broken, it's hard to do. So trustworthiness, as far as instilling it in others, is just holding each other accountable. Right?
Yeah. Now, take a look at what happened with Sam Bankman-Fried recently, who was the founder of FTX. He he lost a lot of people's trust because of what he did, and now he's in jail.
Yeah, and it's a sad thing that we have people out there that we trust with our finances, our lives, everything, and they have a high standard to live up to when that happens, as I do myself, or a priest also.
Right. Exactly. And as you said, once you break that trust, it's going to be very hard to build it back.
You got that right.
So let's move on to the trait of caring. Now, this is a huge deal. And my question to you is, how do you demonstrate caring as a deacon at IHM?
That's been a learnable trait as well. So it used to be that we'll just use I'll use generic examples, but I'll have people come up to me during service, right before service, and say, hey, I've got a question. I've got a concern. Can you take care of? And, historically I would say, well, come see me after, or, we'll arrange it another time. And if time allows, I'll stop now and I'll say, well, tell me what's burdening you. And, where I would historically say, well, I will pray for you. And I'd add them to my evening prayers or my daily prayers. Now it's more of an automatic response of, well, what's so-and-so's name?
Right.
Let's pray for them right now. And then we'll pray at that moment. So taking care of it in the moment, I think, is relevant versus putting off till later.
Yeah. That's a pretty good definition of caring from your perspective.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the trait of citizenship. Now, what does it mean as a person of faith and a family man to be a good citizen?
Well, I mean, to me, divine citizenship is simply caring for one another, right? And to be, it just all falls in line together. And it has to be 2 ways. It can't just be, I love that I help people. But there's times when I'm on the receiving end, and it's tough to be gracious to receive that help sometimes, right?
Right.
But that's what makes the world go round. It's not just a one-way thing, right? If you last Thursday when we did washing of the feet at church, right?
Right.
It wasn't just one way. We had people going back and forth. Okay, you wash my feet, now I'll wash your feet, kind of thing. That, to me, is good citizenship. And I'm not talking about washing feet. I'm talking about just taking care of people in general.
Right.
We need to just do that as far as.
Yeah. And by the way, a little note to our viewers and to our listeners: the washing of the feet is basically a reference to the story in the Bible where Jesus washes the feet of
The apostles at the Last Supper.
Of the apostles, the Last Supper.
Yes. Yep.
It's a great story. And if any of you have Bibles in your homes, I definitely recommend checking out that story.
Supper of the Lord. Yep.
Yes. So let's move on to the trait of empathy. Now, do you believe people across the state, how do you believe people across the state and this country should demonstrate empathy? And in your case, how do you demonstrate in your position as a deacon?
Well, I mean, caring is, it's kind of weird because I think that caring is a natural trait, at least it is for me. When people come up and say, describe yourself and say, well, I care about people. And so it's natural to me. And I don't think it is natural to everybody. But back to what you're saying of, can we be the change? Can we help people focus on, plain and simple, there's times when you look at me and you go, there's joy in that man's life or in anybody's life. And when you see them being so joyful, you say, I want some of that. And when you start watching them, you'll see that their joy is from caring for others and showing that empathy. Right. And I think once we all get that aha moment where we go, there's joy to be found by helping others, by caring about others,
right?
By showing that compassion. That's impressive right there.
Yeah, and a good example, in my opinion, happens to be the Knights of Columbus, which is that a good example of a fraternal service organization showing empathy, in your opinion?
Of course. I mean, one of their primary groups that benefits from that is the mentally handicapped. That's the group that they embrace. And yes, it's not considered a task.
Right.
To fundraise to help them. It's considered a joy to help them, right? We don't go, oh, we've got to do this. No, we're excited about it. We want to help other people. And so, yes, the Knights of Columbus would be a great example of that. There's plenty of fraternal organizations just like them. But yes, great example.
Yeah, I mean, the Knights of Columbus, I was a member while I was in college. So, yeah, I know what it means to be empathetic to others.
Yeah.
Especially to being in that organization.
And you're doing it in such the smallest way, whether you're handing out a Tootsie Roll or helping build a ramp for somebody at their house. It's not, you're not doing changing the world things, but just the smallest things change people's lives.
Yep. So before we close, please share with us some thoughts on how we can bring character back into our culture.
Well, again, I think that us leading by example is the most important thing. I mean, people are going to see us. They're going to watch us, and they're going to measure us, and hopefully they're going to say, "I like that person's life," and I don't mean financially or comfort-wise, but they see that there's joy in our lives, right? And hopefully we can relay that to other people, and they see the trust, the compassion, the empathy, and they go, I want to be part of that.
The 7 degrees of change.
I want to be part of that, and when we can show that ourselves, I think that makes a big difference, because then you can talk it just like we're doing now. Right. Or we can show it.
Yes, and showing it.
It makes a big difference. It does. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this was a fantastic conversation and very enlightening to me, not just to me, but to our listeners and our viewers as well.
Well, I loved being here. Loved the interview, and I hope God blesses you and everybody listening.
All right, Deacon Francis Skinner, thanks for being on Character in Action.
My pleasure.
And thank you all for listening and for watching. Don't forget that you can listen to and follow us wherever you get your podcasts, whether it be on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen or watch. Thank you all for listening and for watching Character in Action this week. And always remember, everyone can be a phoenix.